Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
All right, welcome to GrokTALK and our first news read, and let's see how this goes. Governor Rick Perry running for president, but for how much longer? Perry political director Dante Vitagliano has left to work for the Kasich campaign, and other staff have similarly jumped ship in pursuit of paying jobs with other campaigns. Governor Kasich, by the way, is regarded as the winner of the Governor's Sununu This Is Who the Money in New Hampshire Will Back lottery, and the people pulling the strings of the NHGOP machinery will be his unofficial sponsor. The party cannot, of course, officially endorse any one candidate in a primary, but state insiders get how the game is played. So what happened at Jeb? The conspiracy says that the Walking Dead candidates like Huckabee, Graham, and Kasich were all brought in by rove factions to protect Mr. Bush by keeping other more viable candidates from building more momentum. Bush has the long-haul money, and insiders suggest that Kasich, as governor of Ohio, is likely to get a VP nod if Bush were to get the nomination, at which time the New Hampshire party machine will bow and give homage to the anointed ones. Voters, however, have a different narrative lined up. Trump, Carson, Fiorina, and Cruz are polling better in early states, and while the operative word is early, there's a well-defined movement away from the establishment herd. Dan Tuohy at the Union Leader is reporting that the draft Biden super PAC, or is that daft Biden super PAC, is ramping up around the country, preparing for when or if Vice President Joe Biden announces a campaign. Dan Eaton, a state representative from Stoddard, will be a state chairman in the Granite State. Additional staff hires are anticipated later in September. More than 200,000 people have signed a petition urging Biden to run. Daft Biden advisors Josh Alcorn and Brad Bauman, who were in New Hampshire on Wednesday, say the PAC is focused on building the political infrastructure in the event of a Biden candidacy. Groktober will soon be upon us, and to celebrate, GrokTALK is taking to the road. On Groktober 3rd, we will be broadcasting live from the Federalism Forum at Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester. Groktober 10th finds us live from the Republican Liberty Caucus Convention at the Crown Plaza in Nashua. And October 17th, we'll be trying our hardest to bring you a show from the 603 Alliance Grassroots Selection Caucus in Hopkinton, New Hampshire. The October 17th event is a gathering of the grassroots activists, Republican and Republican voting undeclared voters, to rally behind a single free market, pro-Constitution candidate in the run-up to New Hampshire's February 1st in the nation primary. This historical event gives Granite Staters an opportunity to be counted and to avoid having their vote diluted in such a large field of candidates on primary day. Details about the caucus and a pre-sign-up form are available at 603alliance.org. I got to make sure I keep talking because I got to start some more music, and we're going to be back in about a little over a minute to start the show, so stay tuned. This is GrokTALK.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Things are going frighteningly well, considering the hurdles we had to jump to get here this morning. Welcome to the program. My name is Steve McDonald. I am here with Mr. Skip Murphy, Mr. Mike Rogers, and Mr. Richard H. Olson Jr. has joined us today on the program. Susan Olson, who is on the line right now, will be calling us live from Hi, Susan! From the Concord Gun Show, and she has a booth there. We're going to talk about that. And we also have Ralph Benko, who is going to talk to us about the Fed, gold standard, some economic stuff. Of course, we'll probably have Mike and Kimberly supposed to call in and help us with that conversation. Corey Lewandowski, the chief honcho over there at Trump 2016, is going to call in. We're going to have a talk with him. And, we're there. Sorry, I had to have you on a different button. And Max Ledoux is going to come and talk to us about Maggie Hassan and Planned Parenthood. Hey, Susan. Susan, are you there? She probably hung up because she thought I unhung her up. Just talk on that. Just pick her up. Her up.
All right.
Just do it. Just click it. There she is. You were there, Susan. We were just... You're there. Yes. People could hear you going, hello.
Well, hello, gentlemen. Good morning.
I have to see. I know you see me saying this, but I got 4 mics open, and when I do that, it gets really kind of scratchy. So.
All right.
Yes, good morning. Welcome to GrokTALK from the Gun Show.
Yes, and I am at the Gun Show here at the Everett Arena in beautiful downtown Concord. It is absolutely glorious outside, and the lines are wrapped around the parking lot. Inside is packed with vendors, and of course I'm there with the Women's Defense League this morning. But it's always interesting to come to these gun shows and to talk to people. Joining me this morning is Representative J.R. Hole, who, like me, is outside handing out literature to try to overcome Haggie Masson's veto of Senate Bill 116. And you'd be shocked to know how many people are unaware of the fact that, number one, the legislation passed, and number two, that we have a chance to override her veto.
Nice to see that you're doing that political activism.
I actually would be all that surprised to hear that they don't know.
No.
So.
Well, it's a little disturbing, but nevertheless, we're out here trying to educate, and I'm walking up to people and saying, "Are you suitable?" And they look at me like I have a couple of heads.
Suitable for what?
Yeah, suitable for what? Well, some of them it's unclear, that's for sure. But it's a great day, and this is always a good event. Sorry you guys aren't here.
Yeah, I know. I think it would have been a good idea to do the show from there, and I think next time around we're gonna, next time we have a gun show coming up on a Saturday morning, we should make a point of trying to get there and to do the show from there, and we should make a habit of that generally when they're in Concord. But in order to mentally prepare for that, I need to know in advance, so I don't already have guests booked, and so I guess it's just a communication thing,
Yeah, we'll have to follow the schedule.
It was a great idea when you mentioned it on Wednesday, but my head was someplace else.
Well, I just don't know what you do with all your spare time. But I'm expecting all manner of smarmy politicians to show up today and try and tap their Second Amendment creds with the crowd.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It'll be fun. But we have a video camera here, so not to worry. We're going to be doing some man and woman on the street interviews.
Oh,
and
excellent!
We'll share them and put them up on GrokTALK.
That will be good. That will be good.
Yeah. So, Mr. Olson, loved your rant.
Oh, thank you.
With that pathetic little snowflake. When his son grows up and realizes his father wrote something like that, it's going to be like when you find out your mother had pictures of you naked on a towel. Right? You're going to go, "Mom, please don't, no." And then to find out your father is such a wanker.
No, I think that kid's going to be one of those kids that grows up and, he'll be sitting across from somebody with a glass of scotch and he'll go, "Oh, no, don't drink that. Youth's going to get sick."
Oh, Well, let's hope not. Let's hope the kid figures it out. But you'd be surprised how many kids are in line here. It's really nice to see little bitty guys with good haircuts and little nice pressed T-shirts.
With their pants pulled up.
Do what?
With their pants pulled up.
All their pants are pulled up. Indeed,
Yep.
They would have to answer to me if they didn't. Not to mention their parents.
I got a question for you.
Oh, and here's a beautiful little blonde on his grandpa's shoulders. Oh, how cute is that?
You have to get pictures for us. Hey, I have a question for you. Are there any of Mayor Bloomberg's Every Town or Moms Demand Action folks there?
No, I haven't seen anybody in a dress.
Well,
Man or woman.
All 12 of them might show up, So.
All 12 of them might. Well, when they do, I've got a cease and desist letter for them because they're operating illegally in the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
Yeah, but other than that, it looks like it's going to be a fun day. We've got, in fact, the Women's Defense League is raffling off the most magnificent battalion hand-engraved shotgun, 12-gauge, you've ever seen.
This is the Fosta, correct?
The Fausti, yes.
Fausti Field Hunter, yes.
It is beautiful. You should go just to look at it.
I have that shotgun.
Do you?
I own one. Yep.
Yeah.
And all of the proceeds from this are going to be going to helping train additional women in the fine sport of firearms, and also to help fund some of our activism.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So we have two great sponsors for that: Northwood, George's Gun Shop in Northwood, and former Senator Robert Clegg are our generous sponsors for that. So thank those guys.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Thank you both.
consider it done.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm just looking to, they generally don't have much for girls here. I mean, except the guns, of course.
That's not enough?
So, well, my colleagues who are joining me here from the Women's Defense League took a night and made some really great jewelry, so they're selling that.
Okay.
Made out of shotgun shell casings and, 308s and all kinds of fun things.
Nifty.
Even have some Christmas jewelry.
So, question for you. Since
Yes, sir.
over the last couple of years it has been a topic of great discourse, lots of ammo there at reasonable prices?
Absolutely
Ammo's
not.
Ammo's always overpriced at a gun show. However, there is the occasional terrific buy on brass. If one reloads, from time to time you can get some really great bargains on brass here. But for instructors like me that teach pistols, no, there's no 22 here.
Oh, dang.
And even if there were, it would be overpriced. So, but it's fun to look.
Yeah, because I'm looking for 22 subsonic.
Really?
See me after the show.
Okay.
I was going to say, yeah, talk about that.
You're sitting across the table from the guy you want to talk
I know a guy.
I know a guy. That's right.
I know a guy.
Hey, I know a guy.
Well, I have this handy-dandy suppressor that I could use in my backyard, but it says to use subsonic, and I can't find subsonic.
Huh. Well, we'll help you with that. But I do want to mention something pretty serious here. On September the 16th, the New Hampshire legislature is going to reconvene to address a number of the bills that Haggie Masson vetoed for whatever reason. One of them, and the one nearest and dearest to my heart, is Senate Bill 116, which would have made optional the requirement to have a license to carry a concealed firearm loaded discreetly. And despite both the House and Senate passing the bill, she said, nah, I don't think you need to do it. It's all public safety. The chiefs of police, think it's a really bad idea because 13-year-olds and
Hi, this
criminals
is
will
Rich
get
Gerard.
guns.
Sorry.
Hey, Rich, how you doing? But it's a tremendously important piece of legislation. It would tear down what we call the Great Wall of Maggie between Vermont and Maine, because both of those states
Great Wall of
have,
Maggie. That's a big pile of Hassan you got right there.
a big pile of hash and just another brick in her wall. But she's maintaining the Great Wall between the two states, both of which have constitutional carry. So we think it's time for that wall to come down, and we'd like people to get on the phone, get hold of their senators, their reps, and say, let's override the governor's veto. We can't do it by ourselves. It's going to be a demonstration the morning of the 16th, in fact, between the Legislative Office Building and the state capitol to perhaps try and impress upon our legislative friends the need to do so.
Hey, Susan, we're going to take a quick break. Can you stay on the line?
I really can't. I got tons of stuff to sell, but can I do one more thing?
Yep, go ahead.
Website, www.areyousuitable.com will tell you and help you find and address your local elected official and urge them to override the governor's veto.
All right. Thanks for calling in.
Have a great show, and thanks, guys.
All right. We'll see you. Okay. Thank you, Susan. We will be right back. Everybody stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK. GrokTALk.
Alrighty. Welcome back. Thanks to Susan Olson for calling us live from the Concord Gun Show. Coming up, Ralph Benko at 9:30, Corey Lewandowski at 10, Max Ledoux at 10:30. We expect to have Kimberly Morin on the phone when we talk to Ralph. She's the person who helped us get. And special shout out to all the Groksters and everybody who helped come together and get us guests this week. You know, I don't always have that kind of time, and everybody helped out, so I appreciate that. And check us out on Facebook and Twitter. We are on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Ustream, and YouTube. And this is GrokTALK.
It is. All day or all morning long.
All right, so what do you want to do for the next 10 minutes or so? We have a couple things we can cover.
I think Rick was just bring something up during the break.
Actually, that's an excellent point. Let's talk about that.
Senate Bill 116. Just to recap for everybody, because the press lies about this bill. They lie. L-I-E-S. Lie, lie, lie. I don't care if you're the Concord Monitor, the Union Leader, the Nashua Teletrash. I don't care who you are.
Right?
You lie. Okay. There we go. Yep, that's what we need. Now, chair dancing now commences.
La, la, la.
Come on, Mike. Join in.
I probably shouldn't tell my joke, should I?
No. Okay, so anyway, SB 116, media lies.
Media lies, okay. They all headlined it as doing away with or getting rid of the pistol revolver license New Hampshire issues. Not the case. To do so would take away the reciprocity we have with 19 other states. I know there's 22, but it isn't real reciprocity because they have so many more restrictions in those states. But anyways, I digress. That's not the case. It makes it optional. In other words, if this law passes, I'm still going to go get my pistol revolver license, so I have my reciprocity in Pennsylvania. Ergo, it's not being done away with. So that's the first thing we've got to overcome with legislation, the lies that the press tells about it, because they're not being accurate. The second thing is, we saw this with John Lynch, we saw this with Gene Shaheen, and now we're seeing it with Maggie Hassan. New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police has a very strong voice with the governor's office. That's traditionally been the case. Okay, but understand how many police chiefs are there in New Hampshire? There are 300. And the New Hampshire police chiefs, when you see a piece of legislation come out, you hear from about 10, maybe 12 of those guys. a small percentage. And they really depend on the silence of the other police chiefs. It's not, whatever their position is, it's not universally accepted across the board. We see evidence of this when, all the anti-gun people had 10 kittens a year and a half ago or 2 years ago when they hosted a gun raffle. I don't know if I think it was like they were raffling off an AR-15 rifle or something, the police chiefs, to raise money. And everybody went nuts over it, And God bless them. I'm glad they did that. But it just indicates that their positions are not universal within that organization. So 2 things have to happen. First, we have to look at the legislative history. The first history is that every piece of legislation they have opposed, without exception, has been done somewhere else. It's passed, and blood didn't run in the streets. Okay? We've actually enhanced ability for people to have pistol revolver licenses and safety and well-being. And because they've opposed it here doesn't mean it's opposed universally. The second thing is credibility. Okay, just because you wear a badge and you're a police chief doesn't make you the foremost expert. Okay, there are people that are knowledgeable. Let's take example Sean Haggerty, New Hampshire State Police. Pretty knowledgeable guy. And he can be a little dangerous in the legislative side of things because he takes that knowledge and he's very artful in crafting an argument against a piece of legislation. But outside of those aspects, I think going forward in the future when we do legislation like Senate Bill 116, I think we have to focus on countering whatever arguments they're putting forth, making them less credible. And it's only fair that we make them less credible because oftentimes their assertions are not truthful. They're not grounded in fact. They're grounded in these assertions that, perhaps Million Moms Demand came up with, or Michael Bloomberg, or somebody else. And finally, we got to look at what the vested interest is. And the vested interest is they want to be in charge of guns. They want to control guns. I understand it on one level, but I don't understand it on a citizen level because understand something, folks. If 116 passes or doesn't pass, there's one constant here. It makes no difference. If you're a prohibited person under state or federal law, you can't ever carry a gun. You just simply can't. That's the bottom line right there. And that's my rant. What's your thought, Skip?
Well, I actually think that it would be good to finally go back to the idea that constitutional verbiage trumps everything else.
Absolutely.
And I think we've gotten too far away from it with all of the regulatory, especially the regulatory, but a lot of legislators here in the state of New Hampshire, down in D.C., pretty much everywhere, they're all saying, we don't care about the Constitution. It's not up to us to determine whether or not something is constitutional or not. And I hold, like everybody at this table, we are all responsible for determining what is constitutional and what isn't, because that is our foundational law. And the further we get away from the plain language, and I will tell you that in the year plus that Ian Underwood spoke to the House on these kinds of bills and talked about whether words matter in the Constitution, it made my head hurt, because I put that up and I still think of it all the time now. It really is a case of either the words mean things or they don't. And it makes us have to address hard truths because we think, okay, yeah, somebody who's done a violent crime and is a felon shouldn't have access to a weapon. But when you read the phrase, shall not be infringed, you kind of go, this puts you on point, and you really have to sit and go, which one do I want to go with? Am I on the freedom scale or am I on the security and safety scale? And I think too often folks have said, I want the safety and security, which never results in freedom, regardless of what they want. And I'm not even talking about Benjamin Franklin's famous phrase here. So I look at that, and it's really a case of, I always blame it on the educational system. They don't teach constitutional philosophy in our school systems anymore. So nobody cares about it because they don't know about it.
No, they don't.
And that, I think, is probably one of the biggest things. And even when you look at results, Vermont, New Hampshire, two of the safest states in the union for gun usage, for murders by guns, suicide or accidental or intentional. Thank you. It just... They say these.
Oh.
Yes, they say these things.
You'll find those on gun ranges.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's stultifying to see the reactions of people who really are able to talk past the talking points. We all deal with the real data here at Granite Grok.
Absolutely.
I demand it. I demand that everybody source link in their post back to the data on which they are posing things. A lot of other people write, but more on the left. They hear a talking point and that's it. They never go and research it. And that's it. It's very. What's the word I'm looking for? It does get you angry. Let's look at the data. Same thing with the cell phones in the cars. There's no data available that says cell phones themselves are the crisis point that they are made out to be.
The conversation is, but at this point, the data suggests that the bands don't do anything. So
yeah. The car is full of distractions. The passengers are distractions.
Well, it's not just that. The world is full of distractions.
There's stuff at the side of the road.
You watch young guys driving around Hampton Beach,
Yeah. If you
boom. Oh.
If you let your mind wander for whatever reason, you're not fully focused on the road, and it doesn't have to be the person at the other end of the telephone. If you're not in a phone call, you could still be thinking about stuff.
Yeah. How many of us have we're thinking about a subject, and then you realize, how far down the road have I just gone? I mean, it happens to all of us.
How about when you're on 93 heading south in the morning, and you see a guy driving along reading a frickin' newspaper?
Yeah.
Should be a ticket for that, right?
I mean, but it seems to be part of the progressive mantra, the progressive mode that we're in, that every single wrong must have a law
as a legal remedy. Yeah.
Instead of saying distracted driving. All right, you get the same jail time if you get in an accident and kill somebody by reaching down and hitting the buttons on the radio or adjusting your car heat or air conditioning.
And we had that. We have a perfectly good distracted driving bill.
Just like those things, or making a phone call, it's all the same. You do it when you're on the straight and level and you've got enough room around yourself and you can afford to glance down for a moment. And when you can't afford to glance down, you don't.
Well, just this morning on WMUR, they were reporting on a state trooper that pinched a guy for doing 113 miles an hour right around the Bedford tolls. Mm-hmm. And you know what he gave for an excuse? He wasn't watching his speed. He was distracted because he was texting.
Oh, that's good.
At 113 miles an hour. I'm thinking there's a Darwin Award in the making. You know?
I'm sorry, I didn't see those people on the sidewalk because I was driving away from an armed robbery.
Yeah. Or let's go back to what was it, Martha Fuller Clark driving on the sidewalk.
Hit the pedestrian.
Hit the two elderly pedestrians.
Yeah. What was she distracted by? You know, the other thing
She's doing the people's business. We're almost out of time for this segment. We're going to be back with Ralph Benko. I have to interrupt. I apologize.
Sure, no problem.
Ralph will be back. I assume Kimberly's calling us. Kimberly, are you calling us on line 1? Because we're calling Ralph on line 2. Everybody hang in there. We'll be right back in a few minutes with more guests, and more news, and more GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. The Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALk.
Hey, we are GrokTALK. Welcome back. A little misty this morning on the way in. Some clouds hanging low, making the traffic a little interesting. A lot of people driving north, though, for the weekend. So thank you, tourists, for coming. Spend your money here in lovely New Hampshire, and then go home.
Leave.
Go home. We are GrokTALK, brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and the bloggers at GraniteGrok.com. Please check us out on Facebook and Twitter by just searching for Granite Grok. You can also listen to this and past programs on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and we are also on YouTube and Ustream. So, I am here in the studio with Mr. Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, Richard Olson, and I am Steve McDonald, and we are happy to move forward with our next guest, a gentleman named Ralph Benko, who has a large body of work on the Fed and the gold standard and all kinds of things. And we also have Kimberly Morin with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, hang on, Kimberly. Talk again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, sir, yes.
I can hear you fine, but I feel a little outnumbered. How many of you are there?
Well,
I feel like Butch facing the Bolivian army.
It is, yeah. We have 4 in studio and 1 on the phone. Who you met? Kimberly Morin? Hang on.
Hi, Kimberly.
Did you guys mute me again?
No, you're there. Can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
Okay, are you sure you didn't mute us?
No. Well, they like to mute me sometimes.
Okay.
That's because we have to.
This is going to be interesting.
And Ralph, this is Mike Rogers. I think I met you at CPAC a couple of years ago when I was exploring the goodies, the bookstores in the basement. And I seem to remember a short interview, but I couldn't find the clip. Anyhow, I'm a big fan.
Never quote me to me, Mike.
I wouldn't dream of it. I'm a big fan of sound money, and I know that's one of your hot topics. But what have you been writing about recently, or that you'd like to tell our listeners about? And then let's sort of branch off from there.
Well, I write a lot about the Fed. I met with Kimberly at the Jackson Hole Summit, which was a counter conference in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to the Fed's annual gathering. The Fed's 31st Woodstock, and we had a counter conference with a group of people who were less impressed with the Fed than the Fed is with itself. And I have written recently a column. I do a weekly column at Forbes.com. Your listeners can Google Ralph Benko, B as in Bravo, E, N as in Nancy, K-O, and Forbes.com, and they'll find my column stream called A Golden Age. And one of the columns that drew a lot of interest was one entitled, "If the Fed is always wrong in its predictions, how can it be right in its policy?" And in fact, even the Washington Post published an article not that long ago by their top money writer, Elon Lee, reviewing the fact that the Fed has been wrong in 50 of its last 50 predictions in terms of where the economy was going.
Well, of course, part of it is because they have to sound optimistic, and the other part is they think their voodoo actually works, which it doesn't.
That is correct. So they have been predicting 4% growth kind of forever, and in fact, we've had less than 2% growth. So my bottom line was the emperor has no clothes. There's been an important commission introduced into the House of Representatives and passed by the House Financial Services Committee that is called the Centennial Monetary Commission, co-sponsored by Kevin Brady, Vice Chair of the Congressional Joint Economic Committee, and John Cornyn, co-sponsored by Ted Cruz and Rand Paul in the Senate, to do a complete and thorough review of how the Fed has actually done over its 100 years of history, when times have been good and when times have not been good, and what the Fed's role in that. The Fed has a huge role. It's probably the single most powerful agency in setting the economic climate. And for 15 years, we have been in what I have called in other columns a little dark age of economic growth. We've had stagnation for almost a full generation, for over 15 years now, and it doesn't seem to be ending, and it's really grotesque.
Would you say that the current dark age resembled what we had through the Nixon-Carter years?
Well, we certainly had a terrible time under Jimmy Carter, who doubled down on the bad policies of Richard Nixon, who ended the Bretton Woods international monetary regime, which was a species of gold standard, which had been in effect since I think about 1944, and which generated really fine post-war job creation, income mobility, and equitable prosperity. On August 15th, 1971, he gave a speech to the nation saying he was directing Secretary Connolly, who was the guy who really hatched this harebrained scheme, to temporarily close the gold window. Now, 43 years later, it's been temporarily closed longer than Moses led my ancestors through the desert before reaching the promised land. It's a long temporary, guys.
And we haven't reached the promised land either, and we're not going to if we follow these folks.
Well, yeah, but, Mike, I blame you.
Because we elect the idiots that make this possible.
No, yes and no, but really, look, of these 17 presidential candidates, only Rand Paul and Ted Cruz have made a meaningful gesture in terms of confronting the Fed, and none of the 17 are actually campaigning on it. A few of them have made occasional shout-outs. But the reason they're not campaigning about it, Mike, is because you have not mobilized your listeners to ask them, what about the Fed and what's wrong with our money? There are three elements to the fires of industry, just like there's three elements to fire. There's the fuel, there's the spark, and there's the oxygen. Well, the oxygen is colorless, odorless, and tasteless. It's invisible, so it's not obvious to politicians who are very, who go to the obvious because it's invisible. But I'm hoping that you and your listeners will recognize that it's the invisible factor of the oxygen that's been sucked out of the atmosphere by the Fed that has caused this, horrible. I mean, they put in too much oxygen, they put in too little oxygen. We get a boom and bust cycle, and right now we're in a too little oxygen phase, and the economy is just the recovery after the big bust after the big boom in 2008. The recovery has been pathetic. It's nothing like the recovery that Reagan saw. He got 1 year of 7% economic growth, and his average growth throughout post-recession was something like 4%.
And that's wonderful.
Huge.
Yeah,
that's huge. But why aren't you, and even more important, your listeners, confronting the candidates and saying, what about the Fed? What about the role of good money? I like good money rather than sound money, because sound money sounds like Ebenezer Scrooge, And I like Ebenezer Scrooge after the visit from Christmas Future, but most of the time he was a miser. And those of us like me who are in favor of the gold standard are not, in fact, misers. This is not a council of austerity. It's a council of equitable prosperity. But the candidates need to be hearing from you and of both parties, need to be hearing from both you and your listeners as to, what are you proposing to do about the Fed? Isn't the Fed the perp for the lousy economic growth that we've been getting now under two administrations? I mean, the Fed torpedoed both W and Obama.
Well, they have, although I think Obama encourages their printing. But hang on, I'm going to pass it over to Kimberly because she's patiently waiting to get a word in edgeways, and she's not actually in the studio.
Wait a minute. Are we Kimberly being patient? Are we talking about the same Kimberly?
Yes, we are. She's a very well-mannered young thing.
Okay.
Right. See, Ralph already knows. Ralph, that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because, I've written about it now. I interviewed people, and I want to have people like you explaining it because you're the expert. You've been writing about it for years. I want people like you to explain it in simple terms that listeners can understand, so that when they talk to the candidates, they can say it and know what they're talking about.
Okay, you overrate me, Kimberly. I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Well, you write good columns; they get good ratings. But what you're talking about, the Fed sucking the oxygen out of the economy, I think these alchemists are so far off base that they and Ralph Krugman believe in phlogiston theory.
Pardon me. It's Paul Krugman.
Oh, Paul Krugman, yeah.
Do not lend him my first name. He and I are inveterate enemies.
Can't imagine why. Kimberly, you must have questions.
Well, one of the things I wanted to have Ralph talk about is, not just what's happening, but how it affects regular people, so that listeners can understand, because this is one of the things we talked about last weekend was you mentioned Federal Reserve or quantitative easing to people, and they kind of gloss over. Right. They're like, huh, what? So if you explain sort of how it affects regular people, everyday people, because it does affect us on a regular basis, on an everyday basis. It affects our pockets. It affects our lives. If you can explain that, then maybe that light bulb will go off and people will, because we have candidates here every minute of the day. Ask the candidates, what are you going to do about this?
Okay, Kimberly, let me make 3 points. If I can remember all three, I'm no Rick Perry. Number one, and by the way, that's a tease. I like and admire Rick Perry a lot.
That's funny. Go ahead.
Okay. The first thing is, why do I think it's the Fed? What is the evidence? And that is, 15 years ago, the economy fell out of a good cycle. Okay. And the fact is, yes, whatever damage that Mr. Obama has, as well-intentioned as he is doing to the economy, he didn't, his new policies of Obamacare and regulatory pressure and so forth didn't begin to kick in until just a few years ago. So what happened 15 years ago? There are 5 major drivers to create a good economic climate. There is tax policy, which didn't change materially badly. We had the George W. Bush tax cuts. There's spending policy, and even though the deficits went up under Bush, that's not a growth retardant. There's regulatory policy and energy policy, which is a subset of that, neither of which changed until just a few years ago, and trade policy. Okay, none of those decayed in 2001. The only thing that made a dramatic shift was monetary policy. The Fed went from a long period, almost 20 years, of something called the Great Moderation, where we had the excellent sizzling growth under Reagan and under Clinton. George H.W. Bush's growth was not good because he raised the capital gains tax and he raised taxes and he broke his tax pledge and precipitated a recession. But between Reagan and Clinton, America added 39 million new jobs. I mean, just under Reagan, we added more jobs than the population of West Germany, back when there still was West Germany. It was extraordinary. So the one thing that really changed in a dramatic way 15 years ago was monetary policy, and it did. Everybody concurs in that. It went from the Great Moderation to a boom and bust cycle and the terrible little dark age that we've been struggling through ever since. So that's why after having looked at all this stuff, and I'm not an economist, but I know a dreadful number of economists. They're like Pokemon, got to catch them all. And I've got almost the complete set, except for Paul Krugman, who's actually gone out of the economics racket into the propaganda racket, and Brad DeLong, who is a super neo-Keynesian hysteric. So I know most of the rest of them, and there's pretty much a consensus that the Fed has lost its bearings and entered uncharted territory. So let me anchor that. The perp is the Fed. The perp is easy money instead of good money. I like good money rather than sound money for Ebenezer Scrooge reasons. Okay, so I'm after having read millions of words about this and written 250,000 words about this, 500,000 words about this in the last 4 years, I am completely convinced that the problem is easy money propounded by the Fed totally inappropriately. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that 2%. The difference between 2% economic growth and 4% economic growth, or 1.6% economic growth and 3.6% growth. And by the way, the long-term trend line of growth in the United States is about 3.5% real after inflation. So we're talking about a differential of, maybe 2%. That doesn't sound like much, but through the miracle of compound interest, if you compound 2% a year growth deficit, over 15 years, that means we are all making more than 30% less. If I can say more than 30% less, we're all a third poorer than we would be under a normal growth regime. And if the Fed was providing good money rather than easy money, all of us would be making a third more than we are. So, Kimberly, I know you remember the 1%, and so this doesn't really affect you, but even you would probably like to be making, $13 million a year instead of $10 million a year. But for us working stiffs, that 33% or 35% or even 50%, if they really nailed it, more a year would completely obviate most of our economic struggle. It would restore the American dream. If you look at the GDP statistics, the size of the American economy is almost a third lower than it is from its normal trend line. And the Fed is the perp, but the real perp are your listeners who are not hammering the candidates there, saying, "What are you going to do about the Fed? Are you supporting the Centennial Monetary Commission, which is the right vehicle to set the Fed to rights?"
Ralph, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. Stay on the line. We will be right back to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
This is GrokTALK. We are talking to Ralph Benko. We have Kimberly Morin on the line. And, of course, Skip, Mike, and Rick are in studio.
Hello.
Hello. Did I turn you up? Yes, I did. All right. Kimberly, I didn't know you had all that money. You there?
You didn't know that?
No. I figured you'd be buying equipment for Skip. All right.
So Ralph, you made some excellent points, especially about the change in Fed policy, which was more or less around the time that Greenspan was, in fact, in charge of things. Was he not in charge?
Actually, he did a great job for his first 2 terms, and then Bob Woodward wrote a book called Maestro, which says Alan Greenspan can do no wrong. It went right to his head, is the way I read the tea leaves. And he immediately started, going on a bender.
Yeah. So
in his last term.
Was he not in fact a libertarian, almost a Randian, Ayn Rand that is, and a gold standard proponent in his early years?
And in his late years, his latest book, The Map and the Territory 2.0, has a whole chapter on how great the gold standard actually worked. Now, Dr. Greenspan is pessimistic about the prospects for restoring the gold standard until we get the welfare state under control. But I think he's got it backwards, and not meaning to slur the good name of Social Security, which is not welfare, it's social insurance, and it's the kind of thing even Hayek would have loved. The fact is that if we can get economic growth, and we can, up to 3.5%, a number of the candidates are promising 4%, but their recipes are very seriously wanted, how to get there. Or Scott Walker, who has 4.5%, or Mike Huckabee, who has 6%. It's all vaporware, okay, because none of them are seriously talking about tackling the Fed, and the Fed is the key element here. But the point is, if you guys help us nominate a candidate who will seriously tackle the monetary policy issue by getting the candidates to support the Brady-Cornyn Centennial Monetary Commission, it's really simple and it's not scary. And I'll talk more about the commission in a minute if I haven't already bored you into a state of complete stupefaction. Then both Social Security and Medicare become solvent as long as we keep that growth rate up. We don't have to raise the retirement age, and I'm approaching that, so I hope we don't. We don't have to cut benefits. We don't have to, above all, raise taxes. So the politically suicidal and morally dubious proposal by Chris Christie to, quote, reform entitlements. Watch out when anybody from Washington or who wants to be president uses the word reform. It should make your trigger fingers itchy, metaphorically speaking. It usually means that they're going to try to raise either raise your taxes or take something or take away a benefit. At 3.5%, maybe even 3.3%, we don't have to touch Social Security. We don't have to touch Medicare, and it would be a tragedy for us to do that. They're high integrity programs. So the point here is that if we can get to 3.5%, we can get to 4%. We might even be able to get to 5% for a brief period because we've got a lot of slack to pick up. And the only known way to do that I've been able to discover is by putting the Fed, getting the Fed out of uncharted territory, putting it back on track. And the way to get the Fed back on track is to get the candidates to endorse the Brady-Cornyn Centennial Monetary Commission, which will do a high integrity, neutral empirical study of what the Fed has done and how it's worked out for 100 years. And instead of everybody just arguing with each other, I've got my position, you've got your position. Let's do something really novel in Washington. Let's look at reality. Let's look at the facts, and then draw our policy from what really works for the benefit of working people like me. And by the way, I'm probably the one member of the vast right-wing conspiracy, far right, serial number 0002. Reagan's serial number of the vast right-wing conspiracy was 0001, but we retired it when he retired. I had the privilege of working for him in the White House as a deputy general counsel. So I have the lowest operational serial number of the vast right-wing conspiracy. Nobody gets to the right of this, okay?
Especially on money.
Especially on money. And I'm a dues-paying member of the AFL-CIO.
That's a combination.
It's probably the only. I'm probably the only one, but the fact is, I am in total solidarity with working people. I'm a working guy myself. I am in total solidarity with working families, who are the real victims of this. Because if you look at what economists call the Gini coefficient, that's GINI, not like the genie out of the bottle, or not like I Dream of Jeannie by Kimberly, then we are. Median family income has flatlined since directly when Nixon closed the gold window. The American dream died on August 15th, 1971. Median families have flatlined in terms of their income, whereas the rich have gone up in a hockey stick fortune, because this really benefits this easy money policy really benefits the rich and really prejudices working people like me.
All right, let me throw in two real quick questions here, Ralph. First of all, what was different between the late 90s and the early 2000s, both of which were under Greenspan, because there was a bubble blown right then? And secondly, what's the difference between the damage the Fed did before and after the gold window was closed?
Well, as I said, in the first two, if you look at various indicators that are too tedious for me to actually talk about on the radio, it's quite clear that Greenspan sustained the policies of the great Paul Volcker in what was called the Great Moderation through the 90s. And then late in the 90s or early in the 21st century, he went off on this boom and bust cycle. He created the NASDAQ bubble and bust. He created the housing. He and Bernanke created the housing bubble and bust. And they really thought, I think, just reading the tea leaves, that housing prices could not go down because they'd never gone down. So if they pumped up they pumped up that bubble, everybody would be house rich instead of house poor. I lost my house in the pop, by the way, so I take this very personally. So that seems to be the differential between the early Greenspan Fed and later Greenspan Fed. Does that answer your first question?
Sure. So I was just wondering where the easy money came in, but okay, that's that. And then what's the difference between before and after the gold window? Because the Fed did damage both sides of that event.
I'm trying to recontextualize your question here because as stated, it's not technically perfect. Okay.
No. We've had 102 years of the Fed, and they have done damage to the economy throughout that period with boom and bust and intervention.
Well, let me just point out one thing about that, and that is the dollar today is worth. When Nixon took us off the gold standard, he said that the dollar tomorrow will be worth as much as the dollar today. That is true. On August 16th, 1971, the dollar was worth what it was on August 15th. So Nixon once again managed to tell a technical truth and a moral lie. Because now, 43 years later, the dollar is only worth 15 cents of what it was worth in 1971. And over the long run of the Fed, which when it was managing the gold standard, it managed to bring the Great Depression on our head. Because it wasn't a real gold standard. It was a bizarre caricature of the gold standard called the gold exchange standard, which actually did cause the Great Depression. But the gold standard itself absolutely did not. When we were on a pure gold standard before the Fed in the late 19th century and early 20th century, we had the best period of America had the best period of economic growth in the history of the world. Our prosperity increased by almost sevenfold in that 40 years, compared to 1.5 times in the last 40 years. So the gold, even though Paul Krugman and Matt O'Brien and other neo-Keynesians say that the gold standard is horrible, in fact, the gold standard has outperformed in practice the Federal Reserve note standard by an enormous amount. And I'm not the only one who says so. The Bank of England did a study in 2011 called Financial Stability Report Number 13. How's that for an incendiary title? And your listeners can go look it up. Bank of England Financial Stability Report Number 13, and Financial Stability Paper Number 13. And they did a report card between the paper money Federal Reserve note standard, the Bretton Woods Gold Exchange standard, and the pure gold standard. And they flunked the Federal Reserve note standard in every category as performing worse. Less job creation, more inflation, more recessions, longer recessions, deeper recessions, more banking crises, more currency crises. I mean, just in practice, the Federal Reserve note standard has proved miserable. But the Fed has such prestige in Washington that everybody just kind of assumes that they're a wizard and that they are really good at managing the monetary policy in a way that will create prosperity, even though all of the evidence is absolutely against that.
All right, Ralph, I got to break in because we got about 10 seconds to a hard break. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I hope we can get you back again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And the latest book?
We don't have time, Mike. We got to go. Thank you very much, everybody. This is GrokTALK. We will be right back. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK.
All right, welcome back to the GrokTALK News Read. Same as the first hour, because we'd like to be consistent. Governor Rick Perry is running for president, but for how much longer? Perry Political Director Dante Vitagliano has left to work for the Kasich campaign, and other staff have similarly jumped ship in pursuit of paying jobs with other campaigns. Governor Kasich, by the way, is regarded as the winner of the Governor Sununu This Is Who the Money in New Hampshire Will Back lottery, and the people pulling the strings of the NHGOP machinery will be his unofficial sponsors. The party cannot, of course, officially endorse any one candidate in a primary, but the state insiders get how this game is played. So what about Jeb? The conspiracy says that the Walking Dead candidates like Huckabee, Graham, and even Kasich were all brought in by the Rove factions to protect Jeb Bush by keeping other more viable candidates from building more momentum. Bush has the long-haul money, and insiders suggest that Kasich, as governor of Ohio, is likely to get a VP nod if Bush were to get the nomination, at which time the New Hampshire party machine will bow and give homage to the anointed ones. Voters, however, have a different narrative lined up. Trump, Carson, Fiorina, and Cruz are polling better in early states, and while the operative word is early, there is well-defined movement away from the establishment herd. Dan Toohey at the Union Leader is reporting that the Draft Biden Super PAC, or is that the Daft Biden Super PAC, is ramping up around the country, preparing for when or if Vice President Joe Biden announces a campaign. Dan Eaton, a state representative from Stoddard, will be a state chairman in the Granite State. Additional staff hires are anticipated later in September. More than 200,000 people have signed a petition urging Biden to run. Daft Biden advisors Josh Alcorn and Brad Bauman, who were in New Hampshire on Wednesday, say the PAC is focused on building the political infrastructure in the event of a Biden candidacy. Groktober will be upon us soon, and to celebrate, GrokTALK is taking to the road. On Groktober 3rd, we'll be broadcasting live from the Federalism Forum at Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester. Groktober 10th finds us live from the Republican Liberty Caucus Convention at the Crowne Plaza, Nashua. And October 17th, we will be trying our hardest to bring you a show from the 603 Alliance Grassroots Selection Caucus in Hopkinton, New Hampshire. The October 17th event is a gathering of the grassroots activists, Republican and Republican voting undeclared voters, to rally behind a single free market pro-Constitution candidate. In the end, in the run-up to the New Hampshire February 1st in the Nation primary. This historical event gives Granite Staters an opportunity to be counted and to avoid having their vote diluted in such a large field of candidates on primary day. Details about the caucus and pre-sign-up form are available at 603alliance.org.
GrokTALK comes live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK. GrokTALk.
3, 2, 1.
another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
GrokTALk.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of GrokTALk. Excuse me, I am Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Richard Olson. Hello. We are brought to you by the Granite Grok crew, most of whom are in the room or on the phone, and of course the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Please check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and streaming live on Spreaker and Ustream. Also available post-broadcast on all of those platforms and Ustream and YouTube. And now, The Rock, NHCR.com. So, we're moving ahead here. We have more guests, tons of people, and we're always trying to bring you interesting guests and important and connected guests. And today we have one of those people. We have one of the man in New Hampshire, right? And the Trump 2016 campaign, Corey Lewandowski, has joined us. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys today?
Good.
Hello, Corey.
I can barely hear you.
Corey, you there?
Uh-oh.
Corey, you there?
Hey, I'm here.
Okay, there we go. Just making some adjustments so we can hear you.
There we go.
Well, congratulations. Your guy's doing great.
He certainly is.
Yeah, Mr. Trump's wild ride. So how much of this are you the pilot or co-pilot on the ride?
Well, as the national campaign manager for the presidential campaign, not in New Hampshire but across the country, I get to help set the policy positions that we put forth and scheduling and the direction and our strategic initiatives. And, at the end of the day, I am a staff member, as all staff members are, and, the final decisions always rest with the candidate because they're the ones who put their names on the ballot. But I've had the privilege of assembling a team and laying out our strategy and building out where we want to be not only today but moving forward to the convention next July.
And actually, I'd have to say you've done a great job, and we're not surprised at all. We've known you for years, Corey, and we consider you a friend of Granite Grok. But certainly the polls that came out last night, early this morning, show that Donald Trump is beating all of his Republican rivals and now is beating Hillary Clinton all over the place.
Beating them, he's running away with it.
Yes, this is huge, to paraphrase your boss. But so you should be feeling pretty good right about now, even though it's early. That's always the operative word at this time of the silly season. It's still early.
Well, I wish the election were actually going to take place next week. I'd really feel a lot better, to be honest with you. But we got a long way to go. The good news is I think many people, particularly the political pundits, of which I've never had any affinity to, always said Mr. Trump wasn't going to be a factor in this race. He wasn't going to first file, then he wouldn't do his paperwork, and then he would never fill out his personal financial disclosure statements. And then even if he did all of those things, he wasn't going to be a factor in the presidential race. And I think it is fair to make an unbiased statement that not only has he been a factor in this presidential race, but he is 100% driving the narrative of the Republican race for president of the United States, and people are now following his lead and responding to his issues because they understand that his discussion with America to make America great again is what this country actually cares about. So I love when the mainstream political pundits are wrong. It actually brings me a smile to my face knowing how many of these guys have said Mr. Trump would never be a factor, and once again proven them wrong.
Wouldn't you say, in fact, Corey, that the mainstream media, the pundits, and even the GOP itself have lost control of the narrative, and that yesterday's signing was, in fact, a capitulation by the GOP to the reality that Trump was on the stage?
Well, I mean, look, the American people are speaking, right? And Mr. Trump refers to them many times as the silent majority, those people who haven't had a voice for a long time, the people who are tired of political correctness, who think that, pressing 1 for Spanish and 2 for English is where our country is going and are fed up with it. Yep. And I think what you'll see across this campaign and continuously is that regardless of which poll you look at when it relates to Mr. Trump, his support is so broad. It's not just with what used to be termed the Tea Party coalition, of which I have been a proud member, as you know, but it's with moderates, it's It's people who are self-identified as liberals. It's with people with high education levels, low education levels, high income bracket, low income bracket, white collar, blue collar. It doesn't matter. What it shows is that this country is so fed up with a broken Washington. Congress has an approval rating in the low single digits. People want something changed. They want to be proud to be Americans again. What is so bad about that? That's what I don't understand. Why is it people take offense about the fact that he wants to make our country great again, to make us winners again, to create value, to bring our standards back down where we don't spend more than we bring in, to simplify a tax code? And we get, the mainstream media wants to go after Mr. Trump and say, well, these are radical ideas. Is it a radical idea to build a wall to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in and killing American citizens? I don't understand why it's so difficult.
It's interesting, Corey. I'm talking to a lot of people in the course of the week. Rick Olson here, by the way. And I'm talking to people that haven't voted in 20 years, And they're telling me, yeah, I'm supporting Trump. And these are people I know, I've talked to because I've run for office. I can't get them to the polls. Nobody gets them to the polls. Their opinion is they're all crooks. Along comes Donald Trump. He insults a bunch of people. He works off script, and people love it, It's totally cool. And they're supporting him,
I'll tell you, we were down in Tennessee last Saturday morning for an event down there, and there was a woman, and this has been well documented. She's 92 years old. Her name was Bede, and she had never registered to vote, and she came to the event in Nashville. And she said, I registered to vote for the very first time because I finally have someone I can believe in. This is a 92-year-old woman.
Wow.
And I saw this in Londonderry 3 weeks ago. Mr. Trump gave a speech in Derry, and there was an individual there, and I don't want to say his name, but he's wheelchair-bound. And he contacted the town clerk and said, would you come and help me register to vote at my home? I can't physically get there because I'm wheelchair-bound, but I want to register to vote so I can support Donald Trump. This is not an anomaly. This is happening every day. His appeal is exceptionally broad, and people want to feel good about voting for someone that tells them the truth, as opposed to all of these politicians who are so polished and are so establishment that want to tell you what they think you want to hear, but never actually get anything done. So we see this every day all over the country.
I mean,
Corey,
you can actually... Oh, go ahead, Kim.
I just have a quick question. So when you peel back all the rhetoric and all the talk and the showmanship, and the the words and the Twitter accounts with unpolitically correct things going on, then you have the policy, and that's the substance. And one of the things during the debate that really threw me off was Trump saying that he thought universal health care in Canada was successful, which it's not. What do you do about those kind of things? What's his actual policy and substance behind the man who's, the showman?
So let's look at it, right? We have talked about illegal immigration from day one. From the day he announced on June 16th, part of our platform was to talk about illegal immigration. So then we put out an immigration plan, a 1,990-word immigration plan that is very simple and says, here's what our plan is to prevent illegal immigrants from continuing to come into our country. And then people said, wow, what is your plan on taxes? What is your plan on this? You know what that is? I'll just be honest with you because I'm a very honest guy. That is the media trying to drive a narrative because the rank-and-file person, the person who lives at 123 Maple Street in Windham, New Hampshire, where I live, doesn't care because it is a bunch of broken promises that politicians put out, these 15 and 20-page, or in previous campaigns, 45-page plans on how to renegotiate the tax strategy. Guess what? It's all a bunch of lies. These guys don't do anything. What we have to do is we have to put our faith in people who have a proven track record of getting things done. And here's what it comes down to. It's very simple. It doesn't get any simpler than this. The real question is, who do you want to have negotiating on behalf of you, an American citizen, whether it's with a foreign leader or with Congress, to do what is best for you? Do you want a career politician who's never been able to accomplish anything, that's a low-energy individual, or do you want a person who's actually going to go and say, I've lived this. I know how bad and broken the tax system is, and it's time to fix it. And what we have said is we will put out our tax plan in the next couple of weeks now, and all that is, it's a simple outline so people can understand how fundamentally broken our system is, and we need to do something to fix it. But I don't think the average person, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think the average person wants to read a 45-page policy plan on what Mr. Trump's position is to reform the IRS, because candidly, nobody cares. All they know is the system is broken and they want it better. And I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
Corey, this is Skip. You know who we are and what our interests are and what drives us. One of the things that we've seen with the Obama administration is that they want to do whatever they want to do. They are progressives to the max in the idea of FDR and Woodrow Wilson. There is no limiting factor to these folks, including Obama. They don't care about the Constitution. Now, Mr. Trump's he's been saying he's going to do a whole lot of things, and that's good because I think you're right. People want America great again, and they've seen us go down in their eyes in a whole lot of ways. The question is there a limiting factor to his viewpoint of what federal government should do? And you know where we're asking that question from. Does he believe that there are things that the federal government should no longer do and get out of and not go into stuff that it shouldn't?
Absolutely. What we know first and foremost is that states' rights is paramount. Right? That should always be the case. But more importantly, the basic premise, and I will speak to this personally because I've lived this for a long time, is smaller government, less regulation. I said it when I was the state director of Americans for Prosperity in New Hampshire, when I became the regional director and oversaw 25 states for those guys, and then I took over the whole nation and did their voter registration and got the vote efforts. Smaller government, less regulation is the path moving forward at every level that we can possibly have it at, which means local control. Number one, look, Common Core is a disaster. The fact that we have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., who are trying to tell our children in my community and yours what their education standards need to be, and there are numerous presidential candidates who fundamentally believe that that is the right thing to do, and it's wrong. Then we have a whole series of presidential candidates who you know who believe the expansion of Medicaid is a great idea, the Obamacare state level, right? There are candidates in this race right now who think that that's a great thing, and as governors of their respective states have taken money to allow it to be implemented at their own state. It's wrong. That's not the role of the federal government. It's time to take and extract the federal government from the day-to-day lives of the people that are here every day. There is a role for the federal government. You know what it is? Homeland security. Protect our nation, right? Make sure people are safe in their homes. Make sure we've got roads and bridges that people can drive on so we can get from A to B with a reasonable way of giving that money to the states and letting them decide. But at the end of the day, the bureaucracy in Washington is so out of control, it's so unaccountable, that the only way it gets reined in is by having an executive and a group of people around that executive in the corner office of the White House that says, I won't tolerate this anymore, and it's time to change.
Corey, hang on. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
We are GrokTALK. We're on the phone with Corey Lewandowski, National Campaign Manager for Trump 2016. I have Richard Olson in the room with me, Mike Rogers at the end of the table, Skip Murphy, and Kimberly Morin is on the phone with us. Mike had a great question that he wanted to ask.
Sure. So in yesterday's presser for the pledge for, actually I think it was Thursday's presser for the pledge to loyalty of to the Republican Party, it wasn't so much the pledge that got my attention. It was this: I pledged totally to the Republican Party and to the conservative principles for which it stands. Your words or his, Corey, gotta ask. But that was fabulous because they won't say it. They don't say it and they don't live it. And the Donald said it, and I applaud him.
Well, it's about, what the principles are supposed to be about in the Republican Party, which is conservative principles, which is about smaller government, lower taxes, less regulation. And look, I don't want to make any derogatory statements or belittling statements about some of the candidates that are in this race for President of the United States, but they will go out and tout their conservative values where they think it's appropriate, but their tenure as a chief executive of their state or maybe in the U.S. Senate is very different on those principles. And so Mr. Trump wanted to be very clear when he got up and said what he said, and was very clear that, the only way to change this country is to actually get elected, and the best way to do that is to run and win as a Republican, because I fundamentally believe, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't, that if we don't do something very soon, we're going to hit that $20 trillion debt number or $24 trillion, and we get to a path of unsustainability, and we're already going that way, as you know. We're getting killed on these trade deals. This deal with Iran is a complete and utter disaster, and nobody is doing anything about it. So I think, he wanted to be very clear about what his beliefs were, and made sure that was the case when he spoke on Thursday.
No, you won't say it, but I will. I mean, the bottom line is if you've been following Granite Grok for any amount of time, you're going to see we've been hammering on the establishment, the squishes, the rhinos. They tell us one thing and do another, the John Boehners. That's why that resonated with us, that statement.
And in state, too, and that's why I wrote it, because, we have said many times on Granite Grok that the problem we have with our Republican legislators and Republican leadership is that we have a party, we have a platform, the base and the delegates approve the platform, and they don't live it. They won't stand up for it. And if they would just hold to the platform, we'd be in a much better place.
Well, guys, this goes back, I'm a state guy, you know this, right? I went and fought this RGGI fight, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative fight, which was part of the party platform, and you had the Senate president at the time, the highest-ranking Republican in the state, saying, I don't care about the Republican Party platform, I'm in favor of this instead. They say one thing and do something else. This is the problem with career politicians, guys who are bought and paid for by special interests, guys who are looking to cash out from their job as a state senator or a state representative to go and get a payday somewhere at the end of the road. See, that's the fundamental difference with Trump. He can't be bought. He has so much money, he can't be bought. He doesn't want special interest money. He doesn't want lobbyist money. He doesn't want multi-million-dollar contributions, which I have been there when people have said, we'd love to find a way to give this to you. He says, I don't want your money. I don't care for your money. I can't be bought. Jeb, from Jeb to Rand to right down the line, they all have to go out and spend 80% of their time raising money from special interests and people that want favors from them down the road. And that is a fundamental broken problem of our electoral system right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right, but I also think that what we're talking about right now, I think the ordinary voter has seen this too often, where I was lied to by New Hampshire State Senator Jeb Bradley. No, we're not going to implement Obamacare. And the next day, the presser came out that they were doing it. They wanted to call it something else, but that's what it was. And I've seen this happen all over the nation, Corey. And I think the statement, and you know this from having a master's in political science, nature abhors. Nature and politics abhors a vacuum. And I think Donald Trump has come along and said, there's a disconnect here, and in his business savvy, he sees there is a profit to be made politically, and I'm putting it, mixing business and political terms. He sees an opportunity, and in that it's sort of like Fox News. They saw that half the nation was being underserved with their news. He's doing it politically, and more power to him.
Well, that's right, and I think what you see is people say, a leader. I want a leader. I want someone who's going to stand up, tell me the truth. You know what? We get it, right? We understand we are not as good as we used to be as a country, unfortunately, and we're getting killed on our trade deals and on our immigration deals and so many other terrible things, currency manipulation across the world. Let's get somebody who can actually try and fix these things, because we've tried this story with politicians We've tried it with guys who have been career elected office holders. We've tried it with governors and senators, and guess what? It has failed time and time and time again, because at the end of the day, they're all beholden to the special interests, and they don't necessarily do what is best for the country. They do what is best for them, and that's the problem.
Kimberly.
Yeah, I have a question. Corey, so previously, and Trump has talked about that, he was the special interest buying and paying for politicians, which he talked about. So the question I have for you is, since he did that before himself, and he tried to have the government force people off their property with things like eminent domain, what makes people think, or what can you say about Trump that makes people believe he wouldn't try to do that again as a politician?
Well, so see, look, when you're a businessman, right, or woman, and you've got an exceptionally successful business, you've got people who donate to both sides, particularly if you're in New York, right? You give money to Republicans, you give money to Democrats, because at the end of the day, what you want to make sure you have is access for your business. That's the way the system works, so that if you need a favor, that person is there for you. So Mr. Trump has given literally millions of dollars to politicians over the last 15 years to make sure that if he ever wanted something, they were there for him. And that's how the system works. Here's the difference. If somebody wants to come and give Mr. Trump $2,000 for his presidential campaign, I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to think that he is going to say, wow, I owe that person a favor. It just doesn't happen, right? Because he's spending his own money, millions and millions of dollars of his own money, let alone all of the money he lost from endorsement deals because of running for president, which is in the tens of, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. He doesn't care about the money. He doesn't want people's money. Every other person in this race on both sides, Republican and Democrat, are going to go out and they're going to make promises and they're going to say things to their donors and they're going to tell those donors whatever they want to hear so they get the checks. They can be bought. Trump can't be bought. He won't be bought is the difference. And that's why the American people love it, because they're sick and tired of politicians who are bought and paid for by business owners and special interests. And Trump's the only guy who can't do it.
So, Corey...
And I totally get that. And I get the, paying both sides and supporting both sides. So that's not even an issue for me. My issue is he used the government for eminent domain to force people off of their privately owned property for his own personal gain. If he's the president, what's going to stop him from not doing things like that when he actually has the power of the government firmly in his hands?
So, I think Mr. Trump has been clear that if he were to be elected president, he would completely extract himself from any business obligations he has. He said his children, who are now Ivanka and Donnie and Eric, are, in their mid to late 30s, and he would have them running the company. He would put all of his interest in a blind trust to make sure that he has no personal interest in anything that takes place, and he would only do what is in the best interest of the government and not be involved with any of his businesses. Look, he filed a personal financial disclosure statement that shows he owns over 500 different companies. And so, he has a vast portfolio. He does business on 5 separate continents and has made $10 billion. So, that's how he has built his company, by taking advantage of politicians in the past. He always says, look, if you can't do a good deal with a politician, you're the only guy on the planet, because they always make bad deals. Right? And that's the truth, because these guys, in general, in broad terms, don't understand how business works, and they just kowtow to their wealthy donors because that's how they get reelected. And that's what's wrong with our country.
Corey, I got to jump in here because we're running out of time. Could you give us some contact info real quick?
Sure. DonaldJTrump.com is the best place to go. It's the website, DonaldJTrump.com. The office is in New York. We've got an office in Manchester. We're about to open 2 more offices here in New Hampshire. We've got a great team. I'm happy to be back in Windham today to see my family and spend some time in the Granite State. So thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show.
Okay.
All right.
Care.
We'll see you. Bye-bye. All right. This is GrokTALK. We're heading into our next segment. Everybody hang on. Hold tight. We'll be right back.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Just playing around. Welcome back to Grok Talk. I am Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, Richard Olson, Max Ledoux has joined us. Thanks again to Corey Lewandowski from Trump 2016, Kimberly Morin, and Ralph Banco, all who joined us today, and of course Susan Olson, who called us live from the Concord Gun Show this morning. So, great lineup, and if you missed it, you can check it out again tomorrow Monday at 1 o'clock on therocknhcr.com, or you can go to granitegrok.com or Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio. And, of course, Ustream and YouTube, which Skip always likes to add, but I said it, so now he can't. Anyway, we would like to bring our next guest in, Max Ledoux. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
So I'm not real clear, but I know we're talking about Maggie Hassan and maybe Planned Parenthood and maybe some of that stuff. So why don't you fill us in on...
Sure. Well, I'm a resident of Tuftonboro, and I work for Ricochet.com, which is a conservative website. And I'm a staff member there. And since I live here in New Hampshire, and since the governor has publicly defended Planned Parenthood, she's taken money from them, which I'm not opposed to people taking money for campaigns, but she has. It's a fact. And she has refused to allow an investigation into them, even while the Executive Council has rescinded the money that was going to Planned Parenthood. And she has dismissed these videos that we've all seen, many of us have seen, from the Center for Medical Progress. So I wanted to know the simple question, has she seen those videos since she's dismissing them and since she supports Planned Parenthood? So I assumed that she had not, but I called her office, and Kyle Middleton, the receptionist, would not put me through to anybody who would answer my question, and he would not answer my question, which he's a receptionist, so he's probably just not authorized to, but he wouldn't. So I emailed her communications director, William Hinkle, and to be fair to him, he was on vacation that day. So I got an out-of-office reply from him saying, for an immediate reply, contact Amber Mello. So I forwarded the same email to her immediately, no answer. Next day, emailed them again, no answer. Then the third day, this all started on August 19th. Third day, emailed them. That day I did get an answer from Benjamin Belanger, who is the Assistant Director of Citizen Services. And he sent me a form letter, which he said to me in an email. He said, this letter represents the answer to your question. Well, I'll be the judge of that. And it did not answer my question. It praised Planned Parenthood. Again, the question is, has the governor seen the Planned Parenthood abortion videos put out by Center for Medical Progress? Yes or no? Either she has or she has not. The letter praised Planned Parenthood for providing healthcare services indiscriminately to men, women, and children. So I wrote back to him and I said, this does not answer my question. I want an answer to my question. Well, he sent me back the same letter, only this time scanned as a PDF with his signature on it. Thank you very much, Mr. Belanger. I will put that on eBay in 20 years. Okay? So ever since then, every single business day I've been emailing William Hinkle, Amber Mello, Marianne White, who's the Director of Citizen Services, Benjamin Belanger, and a slew of other emails. I give them the weekends off. I only email them on business days. I have got no answer from anyone for over 2 weeks.
Well, I'm glad to see that we're not the only ones not getting any information because I don't pester them. I don't call very often, but they know who we are, and I get about as bupkis as you have. So the question I have as a reporter for Ricochet.com, have you sent in an RTK, a Right to Know, RSA 91A, otherwise known as a FOIA request everywhere else in the nation, because then they have to start responding to you formally, and there's time limits. They have only so long to find that responsive information.
No, I have not, and I'm very happy to find out about that, and I will start doing that.
Yes.
So I first contacted them as a constituent. I am a resident of Tuftonboro, and I felt, starting off, that I deserved an answer as somebody who lived in the state. And apparently it is the policy of the governor's office to stonewall the citizens who have questions that they don't like. And then the next phase, after trying to contact them as a constituent, was to inform them that I was a member of whatever you would call it, the blogosphere, the press, and that did not get them to give me any information. I've written about it on Ricochet.com, and if you search on Google for Ricochet Maggie Hassan, my post will come up. Next phase was starting to write to all the newspapers. So this week I sent a letter to about a dozen New Hampshire newspapers, and so far the letter has been printed in the Laconia Citizen and in Foster's Daily Democrat, and I thank those two publications for publishing my letter, and hopefully some of the other ones will. I think the Granite State News is going to publish it once a week.
Send it to us. We have a very good readership on both the left and the right. The right because we're aligned with them, the left because we get tracked.
Good.
So send that to us. Send us your right to know when you finally put that together. Let's make this an ongoing series. And we always say it's time for the big flashlights.
Yes.
So if someday that you want to go in, say the week of October 22nd when I have the week off, we can bring said cameras with us.
Excellent.
And we'll give you early warning. We're fair about things here at GraniteGrok.com. And let's see what happens.
And talking about being fair, I want to bring up that Hassan is supposedly going to be running for Senate next year, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe. So I thought, well, has Kelly Ayotte seen the videos? So I emailed her communications director, Liz Johnson, and 5 minutes later, she replied and said, yes, Ayotte has seen some of the videos, not all of them, and she's read about it. And so it's simply not a difficult question. And it can be answered easily, quickly, and with a definitive yes or no.
You know what would be an interesting thing? Ayotte's office is not always that responsive, so I'm very glad that they answered you. Try dropping a line to Annie McCluster, McLean Custer, and see if her office answers, because they're normally very responsive to email questions, except this one might put them on the spot and they might stonewall you. So it'd be an interesting test.
Well, I'll try that out, and then I'll let you guys know. And
Gene Sheen. Follow up with the Benghazi question.
No, it is rather interesting because here in... Oops.
And where's Libya?
Yeah,
where is Libya?
Oh, she met Benghazi? How old is
she? Met Ben? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because here,
Benghazi
as you know...
is lives with Warren women. Warren women.
Yes.
Warren women. Okay. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. But here, we've got the executive council that has voted not to renew the contract, so we've got that added thing. So we're just waiting for Jean Shaheen to, do what she did the last time around and countermand a valid vote. A valid vote of the state to say no, we don't want to do this. And over, as Steve said, she's the federal government ambassador to the state of New Hampshire. And so we would love to see what her office would say to you.
Well, I'll reach out to her, and I'll let you guys know. I assume that all these people have not seen the videos, these Democrats, because I don't know if you saw recently the Susan B. Anthony list. Yeah.
That's great.
They invited 2,000 staffers. Democrat congressional staffers to come see the videos, and 9 showed up. And half of those walked out.
And only 2 stayed to watch them, and they were horrified.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that many people who consider themselves pro-choice have simply not put a lot of thought into it.
I would agree with that.
That's what I think.
I know, because when I was pro-choice, I hadn't put a lot of thought into it.
Well, same with me. When I was in college, I thought I was a Democrat at the time. I like to think now that I was always conservative and just didn't realize it, but who knows. But I was a Democrat in college, and pro-choice, but once you spend any amount of time thinking about it, and the one thing that really tipped me on this issue was in the summer of 2008, I heard radio, I think it was Laura Ingraham, and she was interviewing a nurse who had, in Illinois, who had testified in front of the state senate about having witnessed a baby that was born alive during an abortion and watching it die. And this woman had testified in front of Barack Obama. And Barack Obama, as we know, voted countless times present in the Illinois State Senate because he didn't want to take a position on an issue. One issue that he did take a position on was partial birth abortion. He voted against the ban, the state ban, which was a bill that merely reproduced the federal ban. And he was, I believe, the only senator who voted against it. So it was very important for him to take a position on that.
That's true, and I think we've written about that or talked about it any number of times. But the fact that he made the effort to go public on that is very important.
On so many other issues, he voted present. And this one, and it wasn't, I mean, I do believe he was the only one who voted against it. And there were 3 different votes on it, and maybe one of the ones was the time he was the only person. But he voted 3 times against it. So it was very important to him.
All right, we're going to take a really short break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back with Max. Hang on. Let me find the right button to push.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now, at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, TheRockNHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
We are GrokTALK. That was a little loud. Brought to you by the bloggers GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Check them out at cnht.org. We are GraniteGrok.com. How much easier could that be? Thanks again to Susan Olson, Ralph Benko, Corey Lewandowski, and of course we're here with Max Ledoux, talking about Planned Parenthood and Maggie Hassan, and I'm still pressing microphone buttons, blah, 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 blah. Check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. YouTube, Ustream, NHCR, The Rock, NHCR.com. And of course, you can check out podcast redos or rewinds throughout the week. We take sections of our show and set them up all by themselves so you can check out what you're missing in a little shorter piece. You might not want to listen to 2 hours.
Grok shots.
No, man, 15 minutes sometimes. We do grok shots too, which are usually a minute or less, minute and a half. Could tease you a little bit. Come and listen to the show.
Read us at GraniteGrok.com.
Please do. All right. So,
and because of our guest with Max, Ricochet.com.
Yes, Ricochet, if I could just plug it a little bit, is it's a conservative website. It's national. We have an small international membership as well. It is a membership site. You pay to be a member. As a result, it's very cheap. It's $5 a month. And as a result, we cut out all the people who just kind of drop by to say mean, awful, nasty things.
See, we love it when they do that. Our eyes light up and our fangs come out.
Well, there is a certain amount of pleasure from getting, any type of response.
Yeah, we call it engagement.
I wrote a letter to the Granite State News a few months ago. They had written an editorial in response to the Texas attack on the cartoon.
Yes.
And
Pam Geller, yes.
Pam Geller, yeah, and the Granite State News, which is out of Wolfboro, they basically I read it as being against the First Amendment, and I wrote a letter sort of excoriating them, and they wrote an editorial response to me, in which they said that my thinking was part of the problem.
See,
really?
That's what it is. It's your thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we're going to have to
We'll
look that
we'll
up.
have to re-educate you and set your mind straight.
Yes, because free speech isn't about free speech. It's
Yeah.
about what you think free speech is.
Right, and they
That's
said there
what
was a
it
difference
is.
between hostile speech and free speech. And I said,
oh.
no, there's not.
No, there
Free
isn't.
speech is worth what you pay for it, and theirs isn't very much.
But it was gratifying to have an editorial response.
Oh, sure. It's like when the New Hampshire Democrat Party writes a press release about you.
Yeah.
It's like, yes.
Well, what's the irony there is you call up a Democratic office like I remember when Carol Shea Porter was in office. I called up and I said, "Yeah, this is Rick from Granite Grok." And who? From where? I said, "Granite Grok." She says, "Granite what? I've never heard of it. What is Granite Grok?" I said, "Come on, you know who we are." I mean,
That's
they play these games.
Yeah. See, for us, we're a little bit different. Where you're a writer for a more dignified writer.
Well,
We
I
are
don't know if I go that far, but
well, for a more dignified site, we make no bones about it. We are conservative with libertarian leanings. We're also all political activists. We just don't blog here. And we stand up for what we believe, and we will go after people who violate that.
Yeah.
And I mean, Zelensky's rules. Get your people to do what they think is fun.
Yeah.
It works for us just as well as them.
Yeah, and I don't want to pretend to be any impartial. I'm conservative, I'm pro-life, and my intent from the beginning was to write a post about how Hassan had not watched the videos, but it turned into a post about how she wouldn't even respond to my questions.
And that's even better, because I've always said it's always about the arena of ideas, and if you can't say anything, if you can't articulate your message, especially when the other side wants to engage you, you should be losing. Now, in this hyper-partisan world that we now find ourselves, a lot of that doesn't seem to matter, unfortunately.
I'm wondering why she can't just say no. No, I didn't.
Well, that's
say
what
it.
I don't understand.
She's obviously partisan. We know since she was in the Senate. Emily's List publishes this heroes list, and she's on it. And in order to be on that list, you have to be a conception to live birth abortion supporter. There's no other way to get on that list. And she's on it. She's been on it since she was a state senator in however long they've had the list. So why can't you just say,
even her
no,
minions aren't allowed to answer.
no, I have no interest in this discussion. You know where my position is. That's the end of the story. Why can't she say that?
And Emily's List has given her $60,000 over the years, by the way. $50,000 for 2014.
Well, Governor, you need more money.
Well, Steve, remind me, didn't she try to become part of the No Labels group at some point?
She was at
so this is why we won't get the answer.
This is the delusion of the left. They
At
think
the
that they're
spineless, no testicle announcement in New York City, when they began No Labels, she was there sowing the seeds for her run for governor. Because as a state senator, everybody knew who she was, and she wanted to try to run to the middle. Not that she needed to, necessarily, and she was at the No Labels founding at the very beginning, when the sun rose. on moderate squishes moving the Overton window further to the left. So that's pretty much what it was.
Thinking of moderate squishes, have you noticed when you go to some websites, Lawrence Lessig for 2016 started
popping up everywhere, yeah.
Good grief.
Our
Thinking
buddy
of
Larry.
no labels, no spine, and government intervention.
They're coming up on our videos now.
on
YouTube.
I get Bernie Sanders on Ricochet, which is pretty funny. I always click on it.
I would rather, I would like to have Bernie Sanders in here.
We would all love to have Bernie Sanders in here, and we'd actually be respectful, because you know what? He is that rare old bird. He is an honest socialist, and that's what scares his party.
Yep.
Right. Well, and it's the same, with Donald Trump. Like, if, let's say I was able to ask him, have you seen those videos? He would tell me yes, no, one or two. He wouldn't,
No, when you came in, we were talking to Corey Lewandowski, who's a good friend of Granite Grok. We've known him for years and is now the national campaign director for the Donald. And I see a lot of similarities between what Donald is doing and what Corey says. Corey may dress it up a little bit, but he's flat out. He will always give you an answer, and you will always know where you stand with Corey. And certainly we see that with the Donald, which that's what people want. The establishment Republicans are all into Twitter. They all hate the idea that Trump's thrown their whole plans up into the air. And I just look at it and I laugh like a hyena because it's the same thing, slightly different than what I've been saying about Granite Grok for years. If the Republicans would do what they say they believe in, 3/4 of the stuff that we write about would disappear in a heartbeat.
He doesn't need their money, so they can't manipulate him.
Right. Exactly. And lo and behold, the Donald comes out and says, and pledge allegiance to the conservative principles for which it stands. The freaking Republicans won't do that.
No. But then, there's Maggie Hassan.
A rare few.
Yeah. Maggie the Red Hassan. And we started calling her that when she tried to nationalize here in New Hampshire all of the hospitals. She wanted, sort of like the Consumer Financial Protection Board under the Fed, she wanted it a similar board, unelected, unaccountable, appointed by politicians to watch over all the pricing of the New Hampshire hospitals and then also be able to set their own taxes on those hospitals, so the hospitals would be paying for the privilege of being regulated by this board. And she thought that was a dandy idea. Let's, instead of no labels, be honest of who you are, and let's go from there. But, coming back to why you're here, the no answer Hassan.
And by the way, I went to a Carly Fiorina event.
She's very good.
She's great. I've actually been to 2, but the second one I went to, I said, have you seen the videos? Yes. She said yes. Yeah. She said, I've seen every single one. That was a couple of weeks ago. 2 more have come out since then. She said, yeah, I saw all of them, and they're very hard to watch.
They are very
And I said, I've been trying to get Governor Hassan to say whether she's seen them, and Carly kind of snorted and said, well, of course she hasn't seen them. And by the way, if I can just plug Ricochet one more time.
Sure.
Carly Fiorina will be interviewed on one of our podcasts on Monday by Jade Nordlinger, who does a joint podcast with National Review and Ricochet. And people can listen to that live on Ricochet.com on Monday if they're members. So go to Ricochet.com/join to get the first 30 days free. But as I said, it's only $5 a month.
Yeah, and I'll say that we have also filmed her, videotaped her a couple of times. She also came on the show by phone with us. We spent a good half hour.
Tried to get her on the show today because she's in the States someplace.
Yeah. And you can go back in our archives and listen to it for free.
Right.
Because we're all volunteers here. We don't make our livings doing this.
And what we see is
we're not opposed to it.
No,
just want to get that out there. We're not opposed to making a living doing
it.
Her
campaign stump speech is evolving, not her principles. She's getting better at it. She's weaving in more local interest.
She's really good on her feet. I've seen her twice, as I said. And while there was the second time, there were things that she said that she had said before. It was different, and it was in different places, and so
it wasn't like a recording like some candidates do their stump speeches where they tell all the same jokes in the same sequence.
Yeah, I think you can call it a command performance. Not that it's a performance. A command presence.
Commanding presence.
She's very present in the moment.
Yes, but she's also got in a very soft business line but firm manner. She has that charisma that does bring you in. She's very good to listen to. And she does it all without a teleprompter.
Yeah, and when
she doesn't even have the note cards that, say, a Ronald Reagan or some of the others had to remember the little details. She actually memorizes the anecdotes she's going to use.
Yeah, I saw her in Barrington in July, and she spoke for almost an hour, just with a microphone. And she was great.
She can do it.
Was
Rand
she
Paul can do it.
was she
Ted
barefoot?
Cruz can do it. Donald Trump can do it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of people in this race that really can just stand up there and talk.
Yeah.
And answer questions on the fly. They're not.
I saw Carson as well, and he spoke not quite as long, but and he may have had a few notes, but for the most part, he was just talking.
I can talk and talk, but I need notes to keep me on track.
Topic.
Because I'll just wander off into the weeds.
Same here. I have to have bullet points in front of me to make sure I cover what I
wait, I
intend to cover.
I gotta go to this.
Yeah. We are the ADD bloggers of GrokTALK.com.
Hence the squirrels you're looking at.
Ah, squirrel.
Yes,
we have squirrels. So we have about 2.5 minutes.
Yep. So if people want to get a hold of you, obviously the obligatory question, how would they get a hold of you, and where else do you blog other than at Ricochet?
I'm only at Ricochet. I do mostly technical stuff for them and write as well. Since I'm in New Hampshire, I've been going to candidate events and writing about that. And then I've been writing about this abortion issue as well because it interests me. So my email address is max@ricochet.com. I am on Twitter at maxricochet, but
don't spend a lot of time there.
It's a little overwhelming. I don't.
That would be
quite
like me.
Understand.
It is. Social media is great. I use it to, and it works. I write a post. Mm-hmm. I put it on Facebook, all over Facebook. I use Twitter, and more people read it. It just happens. Mm-hmm. That's the way it works. So when I don't do that, fewer people read it. So I do it every time.
Right.
I've expanded to Google Plus. I rarely put anything on LinkedIn because it's a little bit more businessy, and I can be a little bit brusque with my language, and so I don't always consider it to be appropriate to put it on that platform.
Yeah, I don't use the other media, so occasionally I put something that I think is particularly interesting or funny on LinkedIn for my fairly broad network. But I got to make sure I don't offend the bosses who also read it.
Right.
Yeah. But that's okay. My CEO has introduced me more than once as the gun nut from New Hampshire, so I'm okay.
So, anyways, as far as Maggie Hassan and seeing the videos about Planned Parenthood, if you've got stuff that you would like to share with us, send it to us. We always welcome guest posts, and we'd love to be able to keep this story going from yet a different perspective than what we have here at Granite Grok.
That would be excellent.
Yeah. So, how much time we got left, Steve?
60 seconds.
Yeah, a little bit less.
Wrap up time.
For you, what is the top issue that you're looking for here in the presidential election?
Foreign policy has always been my main issue. I consider myself a classic neoconservative. I used to be liberal. Foreign policy was a big thing. I lived in New York City for 9 years. I went there as a Democrat. I came out as a neoconservative. You can't...
That's a strange transition.
Yeah, it's...
Well, not really if you've been mugged enough by the government.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
Yeah, no,
good
it's
point.
Lots of taxes, and then also when I moved there was still a smoking hole in the ground.
Right.
And that was just... So I was moving towards the right because of that. And
de Blasio.
And then when de Blasio was elected... I like to call him Blasio, just
Blasio.
Blasio.
All right, well, we're about to end
Is
this
that with
segment.
an H in it? Blasio.
Blasio. So then I got out.
All right, well, good for you, because I lived in Western New York, and I got out in 1990. I've been here for 26 years. So this is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Mike Rogers, Skip Murphy, and Richard Olson, and, of course, our guest, Max Ledoux. Thanks to all our other guests for coming on the program today. Make sure you check us out at The Rock, nhcr.com. We'll be back next week. We'll see ya.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone.
GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. The Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.